Imagine a man alone, an entire empire against him, a law that forced him to choose between his own life and what he loved most. Daniel, the man who did not bow down, even under penalty of death. This is a biblical story that goes far beyond survival. It's about unwavering faith when all seems lost. While kings plotted and lions roared, Daniel did something that would forever change the history of faith. And at the end of this video, I will reveal the verse that summarizes the power of this story, a truth that can transform how you face your own challenges today. But before we get there, you need to understand how it all began. The Medo-Persian Empire dominated the known world. 120 provinces under a single government. Darius, the king, had just consolidated his power. And it was at this moment that a decree emerged that seemed simple, but carried a deadly threat. For 30 days, no one could petition any god or man, except the king himself. Anyone who disobeyed would be thrown into the lion's den. Religious persecution in the Bible did not begin with shouts or open warfare. It began with a silent law, signed with ink and sealed with the absolute power of the throne. The streets whispered. The temples emptied. Fear spread like a shadow at dusk, because everyone knew the laws of the Medes and Persians could not be revoked. Not by the king, not by anyone. Once signed, the sentence was sealed, but while the entire empire bowed in silence, there was one man who would not change his ways, a man whose faith would be tested in a way that few could endure. Daniel in the Bible. It's synonymous with courage, and that courage was about to cost everything. Who was this man, and why would he become the target of this deadly trap? To understand what was about to happen, you need to go back in time. Daniel was no ordinary man. He had been torn from his land as a young man, taken as a prisoner to Babylon. Everything he knew, family, city, temple, was left behind, but something within him remained intact. His connection with God. Decades passed. Empires fell and rose. Babylon was conquered by the Medes and Persians. And through it all, Daniel prospered, not because he compromised his faith, but precisely because he never compromised it. He became one of the 3 chief administrators of the empire. His wisdom was recognized, his integrity unquestionable. The story of Daniel was a trajectory of unwavering loyalty. Now close your eyes and imagine. A gray-haired man, a serene yet intense gaze. He stands atop a palace in Susa, watching the sunset over the river. The wind carries the scent of spices from the market. In the distance, the noise of guards changing shifts. Daniel feels the weight of the news he has just received, the decree forbidding prayers. His fingers tremble slightly, not from fear, but from certainty. He knows exactly what he is going to do, because Daniel had something his accusers couldn't understand, a history with God that had been unfolding for over 70 years. Every trial, every victory, every night of prayer, everything had prepared him for this moment. Daniel, biblical prophet, it wasn't just a title. It was an identity forged in the fire of loyalty. But that same loyalty would become his death sentence. Not every enemy comes from outside. Sometimes he's sitting right next to you in the meeting room. The other administrators and satraps watched Daniel with eyes burning with envy. He was older, wiser, more trustworthy, and that was unbearable to them. They looked for errors in his administration. They investigated his accounts. They scrutinized every decision he had made, but they found nothing. No corruption, no negligence, no wrongdoing. Men of faith in the Bible, they often face opposition not because they are imperfect, but precisely because they are too upright. It was then that they realized the only way to bring Daniel down would be to attack his faith. "We will find no occasion to accuse this Daniel," they said to one another, "except by the law of his God." The trap was set, not with swords, but with words, not with violence, but with legislation. They approached King Darius with flattery and cunning. They proposed the 30-day decree. They made it seem like a way to honor the king, to strengthen his authority. Darius, unaware of the plot, signed it. The royal seal was placed on the document, and at that moment, the courage in the Bible, it would be put to the test once again. But Daniel knew, and now he would have to decide. Daniel received news of the decree. He knew exactly what it meant. To pray would be a death sentence. To hide would be to deny everything he believed in. To negotiate would be to betray the one who had never abandoned him. Then Daniel did something extraordinary, something that would forever define the meaning of Daniel's unwavering faith. He went home, went up to his room, opened the windows facing Jerusalem, and prayed 3 times a day, as he always did. Daniel did not bow down. He didn't hide. He didn't change his routine. He didn't try to disguise it. Can you feel the weight of that decision? It wasn't ignorance. It wasn't stubbornness. It was conscious obedience to a God who was worth more than life itself. It was obedience to God above human laws, even when it cost everything. And before we continue, if this story is touching your heart, please like and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications, because stories like this need to be told, and you need to know what comes next. Daniel's open windows were more than an act of prayer. They were a public declaration. My loyalty is not for sale. My faith is non-negotiable. And if it costs me my life, so be it. At that moment, he knew the spies were already watching him. He knew the denunciation was coming. He knew there would be no turning back, and there wasn't. It didn't take long. Daniel's accusers came running to the king as if bringing a victory. Didn't you sign a decree, O king, that anyone who makes a petition to any god or man for 30 days should be thrown into the lion's den? Darius confirmed. And then came the blow. Daniel, one of the exiles from Judah, does not respect you or the decree you signed. 3 times a day he prays. King Darius felt his heart sink. He realized, too late, that he had been manipulated, that the law was not intended to protect his authority, but to destroy an innocent man. Daniel under the death penalty, it wasn't justice, it was legalized murder. But the laws of the Medes and Persians were irrevocable. Darius spent the entire day trying to find a way out. He looked for legal loopholes, he consulted advisors, but there was no escape. The trap was perfect, and the more he tried to save Daniel, the more the accusers insisted on carrying out the sentence. They knew they had won. The sun began to set, and with it, human hope, faithfulness to God in difficult times. It often leads us to places where only God can save us. Daniel was to be thrown into the lion's den. There was nothing more the king could do. But was there really nothing that could be done? Night fell upon the palace like a cloak of mourning. King Darius was trapped by his own law. With a broken heart, he ordered Daniel to be brought before him. When the two met, the king could not hide his anguish. He looked into the eyes of that righteous man and said something astonishing. Your God, whom you serve continually, will deliver you. What an impressive statement from Daniel and King Darius. The pagan king had more faith in Daniel's God than many who claim to believe today. He saw something in that man that made him believe in the impossible. But even that faith could not change the law. Daniel was taken away. The stone was rolled over the entrance to the den. The royal seal was placed. And then silence. A heavy, deafening silence. Darius returned to the palace, but refused food. He refused music. He refused any form of consolation. He spent the entire night awake, tormented by the thought of that righteous man being torn apart by wild beasts. Meanwhile, in the darkness of the den, Daniel faced his final test. Not just a test of faith, but a test of everything he had preached throughout his life, biblical stories of courage. It's not about the absence of fear. It's about trusting in God even when fear is real and death seems certain. And it was in that cave that the impossible happened. Imagine the darkness absolute darkness, the pungent smell of animals, the sound of heavy breathing, the roars echoing off the stone walls. Daniel and the lion's den, it's an image that has endured for centuries. But what really happened inside? And then Daniel saw them, lions, not one or two, several, enormous bodies, sharp fangs, tense muscles, creatures that could tear him apart in seconds. But something was different. The lions didn't attack. They watched him, but didn't advance. It was as if an invisible barrier stood between Daniel and the beasts. It wasn't paralysis on the part of the animals. It wasn't luck. It was direct and undeniable divine intervention. Daniel felt something that few can describe, faith that confronts death, and he triumphs. Not through human strength, not through strategies, but through the presence of God, which manifested itself in that den in a way as real as the stones around it. Scripture says, "My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths. While the king spent the night sleepless in the palace, Daniel rested among lions tamed by a miracle." Because when you serve the living God, not even the laws of nature can touch you without his permission. But the story doesn't end at the grave. The best was yet to come. That was the longest night in the history of the Medo-Persian Empire. In the palace, Darius couldn't close his eyes. Each minute seemed like an eternity. He imagined the worst. He imagined Daniel's body being torn apart. He imagined the sound of the roars and the silence that would follow. But in the grave, something completely different was happening. While the world above awaited tragedy, heaven was working a miracle in the lion's den. We don't know if Daniel slept that night. We don't know if he prayed aloud or silently. But we know he was alive, intact, protected. The lions, which would normally attack any human being in seconds, became as tame as lambs, not because they lost their instincts, but because an authority greater than instinct was present. The same authority that shut the mouths of the lions in Daniel's time continues to shut the mouths of accusers, of diseases, of impossibilities today. The Bible and spiritual resistance. This teaches us something powerful. God doesn't always remove trials, but he is present in them. Daniel wasn't spared from the den. He was kept inside it. There's a profound difference there. Sometimes God delivers us from the valley. Other times, he goes down into the valley with us. And when the first ray of sunlight began to appear on the horizon, something extraordinary was about to be revealed. As soon as the sun rose, King Darius was already on his feet. He rushed to the lion's den with a haste unbefitting royalty. His heart pounded. His voice trembled as he cried out, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to deliver you from the lions?" There was a moment of silence that must have seemed eternal. And then, from the darkness of the den, came a voice, clear, strong, alive. "O King, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the mouths of the lions, and they have not harmed me, because I was found innocent before him." Daniel, an example of faith. He was alive, without a scratch, without a mark, without a single hair on his clothes torn. The victory wasn't just physical, it was spiritual, it was public, it was undeniable. Because when God works a miracle, he leaves no doubt. He leaves no room for alternative interpretations. He simply manifests himself. The king's servants rushed to get Daniel out of there. They threw down ropes. They opened the entrance. And when he came out in the light of day, before all who were waiting, the reaction was immediate. Astonishment, fear, reverence. Inspiring biblical characters, it is not those who never face crises. It is those who emerge from crises with the testimony of a living God. But God's justice was not finished. There was still a reckoning to be made. King Darius, still trembling with emotion, made a swift decision. He ordered that the men who had accused Daniel be brought in, along with their wives and children. And before they even reached the bottom of the den, the lions tore them to pieces. The same animals that had not touched Daniel destroyed his accusers in seconds. This was not cruelty, it was divine justice. It was undeniable proof that what happened to Daniel was not luck. It was not coincidence. It wasn't because the lions weren't hungry. It was because God protected his servant. And those who plotted evil reaped exactly what they sowed. But the most impressive part came later. King Darius, deeply moved, wrote a decree that was sent throughout the empire. I issue a decree. In every part of my kingdom, everyone must tremble and fear before the God of Daniel, for he is the living God who endures forever. Faithfulness to God in difficult times. It's not just about surviving, it's about transforming. The faith of one man changed the perception of a king, and the perception of a king changed the consciousness of an empire. Daniel didn't seek this. He didn't plan this. He simply remained faithful, and God did the rest. Biblical stories of courage, examples like this remind us that our testimony can reach places our words never could. A man who did not bow down became the instrument that made an entire empire recognize the true God. But what does this ancient story have to do with you today? You may not be facing a literal lion's den, but you know the modern-day pits. The pressure to compromise your values at work, the temptation to hide your faith to be accepted, the fear of losing everything if you stand firm. Daniel lived more than 2,500 years ago, but his story speaks directly to your heart today. Lessons from the life of Daniel, they go far beyond a spectacular miracle. They teach us that faithfulness to God has a cost. Daniel could have closed the windows. He could have prayed in secret for 30 days. He could have waited for the decree to pass, but he understood something profound. Partial obedience is disguised disobedience. When faith is tested, we discover who we truly are. Daniel didn't become faithful in the lion's den. He entered the den faithful because he was already faithful in his room, in his administration, in the small daily decisions. The den merely revealed what already existed. Your lions may have other names: financial pressure, family rejection, illness, crises. But the same God who shut the lions' mouths continues to work today. And here is the truth I promised at the beginning of this video. The verse that sums up this whole story. The people who know their God will be strong and do exploits. Daniel 11:32. It's not about personal strength. It's not about human courage. It's about knowing the one who is stronger than any pit, any law, any impossibility. Men of faith in the Bible, they weren't superheroes. They were ordinary people who served an extraordinary God, and you can be one of them. Today, right now, wherever you are. Daniel's story didn't end that morning when he emerged from the pit. It continues to resonate in every person who chooses not to bow down, even under pressure, even under threat, even when all seems lost. Perhaps you are facing your own deadly decree right now. A situation where doing the right thing seems to cost everything, where faith is tested to the extreme, where you wonder if God is truly present. Daniel was exactly where you are, and he left us a legacy. It is worth trusting in God, even when it leads us to impossible places. Because the same God who sent his angel to shut the mouths of lions can send his angels to shut the mouths of your impossibilities. He can transform your pit into a testimony, your trial into victory, your despair into hope. If this story touched you, leave a comment saying, "I will not bow down." And share this video with someone who needs this message today. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because we will continue to bring you stories that strengthen your faith. Daniel in the Bible reminds us that unwavering faith. It's not about never being afraid. It's about trusting God despite fear. The question isn't whether you'll have a grave. The question is, when it comes, who will be with you inside it? Choose today to serve the God who is stronger than any lion, more powerful than any decree, more faithful than any circumstance. Daniel did not bow down. And you? May your life be an answer.